Hi, I'm Dr. Luana Marques. I'm Associate Professor at Harvard Medical School and Director of Community Psychiatry Pride at Mass General Hospital. I want to welcome you to our webinar, and today we're going to be talking about exploring our thoughts. Specifically, we're going to be talking about how to regulate our emotions and build resilience in the face of a pandemic. I'd like to take a moment to thank the leadership at Harvard Medical School, in particular, the Dean's Office and the Administrative Leadership, the Program in Graduate Education, the Office for External Education, the Office for Postgraduate Medical Education and Human Resources, for coming together in a short time and ensuring that our community's emotional and physical health is taken care of. In this webinar series, we've discussed first the role of anxiety and how too much anxiety affects our brain. We shared strategies in our second webinar on how to slow down your brain. We talked about the importance of charging up, of staying active and staying connected as ways to boost our immune system. And today we're going to focus on exploring our thoughts. The world as we knew it has come to a halt. Places that we imagined would be completely packed, like restaurants, office, parks, are completely empty. And here in Mass, most of us are at home, either working from home or trying to work from home. As a result, there is increased economic insecurity in the country with huge drops in the market. A brief survey showed, in fact, that 88% of responders were worried about the economic situation in the US. Not only has this pandemic affected all of us economically and mentally, it's taken a toll also in our youth. As we imagine all of the things they're looking forward to, like graduation, prom, games, have been canceled. Today, we have the pleasure of welcome one of that youth, Lila, who is a sophomore at Boston Latin, the daughter of a member of our community at HMS. And Lila has agreed to share her own experience with us so that we can understand how our youth is facing this pandemic. Lila, welcome to the webinar. I'd love to hear how things have been for you since you've been home from school.
Thank you. So mostly it's just been this really tough and crazy sudden transition that even though as we saw stuff happening around the world and in even other parts of the country, it was still just like a shock to all students and to me. And it's been really tough figuring out how to work from home, not really knowing what's going to happen next. I'm upset about missing out on a lot of different things. I was gonna do track. There's a lot of tests that I was supposed to take to graduate. And then also it's just, I don't really know what's going to happen this summer, or if I'm going to go back to school, or how I'm going to stay in touch with my friends. And just all of that sort of piling up on me kind of makes me feel stuck.
That makes a lot of sense, Lila. Sounds like, in this webinar, as we talked earlier about the idea that, what we say to ourselves affect how we feel and what we do. And this incredible uncertainty and change that you faced and all of our youth really has been facing this state has led to a lot of what's going to happen, and what will I go back to school, and how do I stay in touch with my friends? I think, Lila, you mentioned to me before this webinar, in fact, you just got your first job this summer, and you're really worried that you might not be able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I was really excited, really looking forward to it. And now I'm not even sure if we're going to be allowed out this summer.
That makes a lot of sense. It sounds like, you're stuck on that spinning cycle, that you're saying things to yourself like, I don't know what's going to happen next. You're feeling particularly anxious, and you're talking about feeling stuck, and that you're sort of not sure what to do. And you're not alone. In fact, a lot of our youth, and in fact, in our country, is experiencing this. What's really important, and what we're going to talk today, is how do we stop this spinning cycle? What would it take for us to do that? And the strategy that we're sharing with you today, based on cognitive behavior therapy, is something called exploring our thoughts. So what are thoughts? Thoughts are the things that we're saying to yourself. Those are the nonstop commentaries that we have in our brain. Like Lila just shared with us. What is going to happen this summer? Will I be able to do this? My first job, she's so excited. So thoughts are really the things, they're words, they're in our brain. They're there most of the time. But for some people, sometimes thoughts appear as an image. You might be sitting at home and you have this image of being stuck at home for a long time, and that might lead to strong emotions as well. Most of us tend to think of our thoughts as balanced, as accurate, as right on point, like 20/20 vision. However, sometimes our thoughts are more like 3D glasses or like magnifying glasses. They tend to be a bit distorted. Currently, given that the anxiety is high and many of us have our limbic system, the part of our brain that's our fight or flight activated, it really impacts the way we're seeing the world and what we're saying to ourselves. And our youth in particular is really suffering. This idea that they've been, if you look at TikTok, for example, and just a hashtag coronavirus, 7.2 billion views on TikTok. Our youth is being bombarded by catastrophic messages that this may be really the end of the world for them. Let's share an example that we got from Lila, who kindly shared her feed on TikTok of what youth is hearing. What is the message they are getting about what this summer will look like? Now let's think about that for a second. Imagine that you're sitting at home, you're no longer going to school, you're like Lila, feeling like really stuck. And this is the message you're getting in. No wonder many of our youths are saying things like, the summer will be canceled. This is the end of the world. I will lose all my friends. I will never be able to go out. My relationship will be ruined forever. These are examples of thoughts that our youth currently is experiencing. And quite honestly, not just our youth. Most of us at one point or another since this pandemic have found ourselves stuck with pretty black and white thoughts. So what do we do about this? Well, when we are talking about exploring our thoughts, we're really talking about taking a little distance from those thoughts and being able to ask questions of our thoughts, to basically not assume that our thoughts are perfect vision. One way to do this is to ask, is that thought true? Is what I'm saying to myself, this summer will be canceled, I'll lose all of my friends, is that true? Now, how would we answer that question? In clinical psychology, we recommend that our patients evaluate their thoughts by looking at data. Data is something that's held in the court of law. Things like the World Health Organization or the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, reliable source of information that will help us actually evaluate our thoughts. I'd like to hear from you back here, Lila. This idea of, like, you shared some thoughts earlier on about like the summer is going to be canceled. How does this idea of looking at data to explore that thought resonates with you?
It's kind of hard because I can't find any data about what possibly could happen.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I'm struggling with that myself, Lila. You know, I tend to use these techniques all the time. And what I found myself really stuck lately is that when I say to myself, you know, I'm going to be home stuck with my kid for a long time, I'm not sure that's a catastrophe because I don't have reliable source of information. So you're right on point, Lila. So if we can't do that, then there is another trick we can do, which is the idea of asking, is that thought helpful? Now, what do I mean by helpful? Let's consider first, what does that thought make you feel like? So if you say to yourself, the summer is completely canceled, what emotions does that cause? And what does it make you want to do? Lila, I'd love to hear from you about that thought of the summer is going to be canceled. How does it make you feel when you say that to yourself over and over again?
It's really overwhelming, and just start spinning and everything is piling on top of each other, and I feel trapped and I don't know how to stop thinking like that.
So you really get stuck on this sort of thinking about thinking, and the emotions get really high. And then what does it make you want to do?
it makes me honestly just want to do nothing because I don't really know what there is to do. And just thinking about it makes everything worse.
Exactly. So Lila is illustrating for us something really important, that when we start to have catastrophic, black and white, magnified thoughts, that sometimes they really paralyze. So the trick here is to identify those thoughts. And one way to do is what Lila just shared with us, this idea of paying attention to your emotional thermometer. Where are you in this moment? And if a specific thought is feeding a lot of your anxiety, then we need to figure out what to do. It's not helpful. But then what? One suggestion that I'd have for most of you is to be able to then focus on behaviors. When we are on fight or flight, when we're stuck on those catastrophic thoughts like Lila, we might need to break that cycle by actually doing something. So what can we do? In our previous webinars, we shared several different strategies, and I'm not going to go through all of them here again. I encourage you to go back to our second and third webinars. Basically, if you catch those catastrophic thoughts and you find yourself feeling pretty bad, one suggestion is to slow down your brain by, for example, practicing healthy habits. Another suggestion might be to do something that's good for your immune system and good for your brain and for your emotions. Exercising, eating healthy, practicing sleep hygiene. And like Lila suggested, many of us are feeling disconnected. So really leverage into social connection. Many of us are struggling on how do we talk to our kids about this. We just heard from Lila, a sophomore at Boston Latin and a daughter of one of our faculty here at HMS. Given that I'm not a child psychologist, we decided to invite an expert, Dr. Jamie Miko, who is the co-founder and managing director of the Concord Center. She's lectured in psychology at HMS and author of the Worry Workbook for Teens. Jamie is exceptional, a friend and a colleague. Jamie, welcome to our webinar.
Thank you so much for having me, Luana.
It's a pleasure. I would love to hear from you, Jamie. What are the tips that you are talking to your families now about talking to youth? What should they be hearing?
Absolutely. So I think a lot of parents of teens at this juncture are feeling overwhelmed by having to manage their work schedules while also being a good parent to kids who are stuck at home, while also making sure that their kids continue to get an education. And that can be overwhelming and sometimes make it difficult for parents to stay focused on what their teens may be experiencing. To the point that sometimes they wonder, like, why is my kid acting so angry or irritable or a little bit withdrawn? And the reason is that a lot of kids are struggling with this change in their usual routine and feeling separated from their friends and not quite sure what's going to happen next. Like a lot of us are feeling, having to tolerate that uncertainty is hard. So I really think it's important to remember and put ourselves in our teens' shoes that there are a lot of important milestones and important events, exciting events that happen, especially in the spring in high school. For example, not being able to take standardized exams that you were expecting to take, or not being able to go to a prom that you've been looking forward to, missing graduation. Those are really disappointing things. So it's so important for parents to take some moments and really sit down with their teens and listen to what they have to say about their experience and validate the feelings of disappointment and loss that they're experiencing. So for example, if your high school junior has really been working hard on preparing for the SAT, I can imagine saying, like, you've worked so hard to get ready for this test. It's so disappointing. Of course you feel mad and upset that the SAT has been canceled for now. So I think it's really important to take that moment to listen and validate your teen's experience. Next, because a lot of teens are struggling with not being able to see their friends as they're accustomed to, at least not in person, parents should allow their kids to have every opportunity to stay connected to their peers. So this may mean flexing a bit on some of the usual rules around Snapchat, social media, screen time, to be able to give kids the opportunity to see their friends as much as they can. Teens are social creatures in particular. Developmentally, they're hardwired to get most of their support from peers. And giving them that opportunity to stay connected really matters in a difficult time like this, especially since they can't go to school and get an opportunity to see kids every day as they normally would. That said, I think that helping kids maintain structure and make some healthy choices is key to getting through this crisis as well. So kids might benefit from having parents sit down with them and think through, like, what do I want my daily routine to look like given that we are at home right now? So being able to have a usual wake up time, a normal bedtime that's pretty consistent across the week is important. Doesn't mean that kids have to get up at 6 a.m. as they might be accustomed to in high school, but perhaps by 8:30, getting up, getting started with the day, and having time set aside for completing schoolwork, time set aside for leisure and connection with peers. Making sure that there are regular meal times just to maintain both physical health, but also mental health. I think another thing just to emphasize is that a lot of teens are feeling so bereft about not having the opportunity to see their friends that some may try to get out of the house and sneak away to try to connect with their friends, like to have a pickup basketball game or just to hang out. And that makes sense. A lot of teens are getting the message that this isn't going to be too harmful for them personally if they were to acquire COVID. Teens are hardwired to feel invincible and believe that they'll live forever. And in this instance, I think it is important to sit down with your teen and say, listen, you may not be directly impacted by this as severely as people who are older or immunocompromised, but you may hang out with a friend who's not showing symptoms, but is contagious, and then you might acquire it and pass it on to your grandmother, for example. So giving some concrete examples about how this could directly impact the family or people that they care about can be really important in delivering the message about why social distancing is so important for teens and help them continue to make healthy choices. Also during this time, it's important to remember that, yes, kids need to keep up with their schoolwork, especially when schools are giving concrete assignments to them to get done. But at the same time, there's a lot more time to get that work done. Teens in particular are used to managing and juggling a broad range of activities, social experiences, and academics. Given that there's so much more time, I think it's really important to give teens the opportunity to make their own work schedule and to trust them to be able to get that work done. I think parents are feeling the weight on their shoulders to make sure that their education continues. And that's something that a lot of teens are able to do for themselves and gives them a sense of control and autonomy in a situation where they're not feeling a great deal of control. If you do happen to have a teen who struggles with organizational skills or time management, then it may make sense to have a moment to sit down and just say, how can I be helpful? Would it be helpful for me to help you think through this schedule? And so on, still kind of putting it in their hands to have the problem solving. And then finally, I think it's important to remember that this is a great time to connect with your teen. Now that we have a lot of time at home together, being able to give kids low-key activities to connect with family, like watching a movie together, playing a board game, getting out and just taking a walk. Those are fantastic ideas for staying connected. That said, don't be surprised if your teen declines sometimes or maybe doesn't have deep philosophical conversations with you during those walks. They're trying to process and manage so many different types of thoughts and feelings, as Dr. Marques said before, that they may just need the downtime and may sometimes need time to themselves, and it's not personal towards parents. So being flexible in the way that you manage family time is important as well.
Thank you, Jamie. This is incredible. Sounds like Jamie is really asking us to make sure we're structuring their days, that we allow them to connect and maintain their social support, that we allow them to take some responsibility for doing some of their homework, but we have flexibility around there. There's no perfection here, that we listen and really understand for their point of view. They're also having some of the responses we are having. But let's not forget, this is a moment. That's why I heard loud and clear from Jamie, for us to connect as a family, for us to be able to support each other and to do things they're fun together, perhaps cook a meal or do something that allows for the families to unite. I want to welcome back Lila, and I'd love to hear from you, Lila. What are your thoughts about Dr. Miko's suggestions?
Yeah, so I thought that they were all really good points, and they definitely all seem to ring really true for what's been going on at home for me. I think personally the most important one there was about being able to stay connected, because for me going to school is just as much about socializing and seeing my friends, having some time away from the house, as it is about academics and learning. And so I'm getting the schoolwork, I'm getting the learning, but I think it's really important for my parents and all parents to understand that it's really necessary for me to be on FaceTime, texting, like social media, to stay in touch with my friends, because I'm not getting that anywhere else.
That's wonderful. Jamie, what would you say to Lila's parents who are trying to sort of manage all of this? And I know them personally. They're trying to say, listen, don't stay there too much. What would you say to them in terms of allowing Lila to connect here?
Lila seems to have a good sense of what she needs in this situation, and I would trust her to make good choices for herself around managing connections and how often she is on FaceTime or on Snapchat or whatever. If parents are observing that it's becoming an all-day thing and her academics are starting to take a backseat to her detriment, then that can be a family discussion rather than necessarily hard and fast rules that in this moment are probably not going to be able to be maintained anyway.
Excellent. Well, thank you again, Lila, for being so brave and being willing to share some of the changes that you're facing. Thank you, Dr. Jamie Miko, for really sharing some of your expertise. I want to finish by reminding us of some take-home messages. Our thoughts are what we're saying to ourselves. They are the commentary that's in our brain all the time. Not all of our thoughts are true and or helpful. We have to remember that even though we'd like our reality to be 100% accurate, to be like 20/20 vision, in the moment of a pandemic, most likely our thoughts are slightly distorted. When those thoughts keep us spinning, when it keeps making us anxious, let's anchor on some behavior strategies, doing things to cool off your brain, keeping your body active, connecting with others. We also get the privilege of listening to Dr. Jamie Miko, who helped us understand what parents should be talking to their kids about. Finally, I'd like to remind us of some additional resources. The coronavirus page at Harvard Medical School is incredible with evidence-based information. And Mass General, the Clay Center for Young Health Minds, have lots of information about how to talk to your children in different ages, and in fact have resources now in Spanish. And nationally, the Anxiety and Depression Association of America is an evidence-based association that also brings good resources for parents, families, and for consumers. Please feel free to connect with us. We'd love to hear from you on your thoughts about the webinar. Thank you so much.